Welcome to the acclaimed podcast, The Deep Dive.
Yeah.
Welcome
Do it.
to The Deep Dive. Andy. Wednesday. We only have 3 of these left. Are you kind of sad?
I am, but I had so much fun talking to Suma. I think we'll have to do another one of those.
Ooh,
I enjoyed talking to...
Is your good mic on? I should have told you.
No, I don't think so. Is my mic a little weak?
Yeah, you're a little weak here. I'm not getting the full bass. I want all the goods.
I wonder if I can't hook it up. I had a little computer problems today. I wonder where's the back of this one go? Now you got me like yanking on cords. I'm like off camera.
We're live, so it's all good.
Yeah, we are live. It's fine.
We want to give the people the best possible audio experience. This is a no frills operation here. No expenses spared.
Yeah, that was a mistake to hit that.
I'll give us a little bit of a warm up here because we're going to cover the second half of the AFC West today, which includes, of course, the Los Angeles Chargers of Anaheim as well as the Kansas City Chiefs. But before we go with those 2 teams, there was huge news on the team we just covered. So already our latest podcast has been dated. The Denver Broncos have named Teddy Bridgewater their starting quarterback, and your volume is way, 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 way low.
Did we kind of cover all the bases, though?
Well, we did cover our bases. I feel like in that Denver Broncos podcast, your volume is still super duper, 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 duper low. But aside from, we were debating at the end, what are they better off doing? And I guess in hindsight, to the surprise of no one who understands a defensive head coach and what that means for your team, the Fangio went with the safe choice. And the safe choice was Teddy Bridgewater. Less likely to turn the ball over, less likely to, make the back-breaking decision that loses you a game. And they're going to lean on that defense to try to get wins this season, which is, it's a little bit of a suspect decision in my opinion, just because I don't know what 8-9 or 9-8 really gets you. I think, your future really revolves around getting Aaron Rodgers next season if you truly intend to make the most out of this roster. But what was your gut reaction to the Teddy Bridgewater decision?
Yeah, I mean, it gets you damn close to the playoffs. Probably not in. But yeah, I think you framed it well, and we talked about this a little. Hopefully my volume's back where it should be.
It's up.
I think I'm at full speaking volume now, but the distribution of win totals with the lock was huge. You said, it's from like 4 to 12. Yes. You just don't, the guy probably stinks, but we know a lot less about him. Teddy Bridgewater is a known quantity. He's been in the league long enough. We've seen him in multiple offenses with multiple schemes. You kind of know what you're going to get. We've seen him in preseason. We've seen him with other coaches. We've seen him with this offensive coach. We've seen him do this. We know what you're going to get. It's going to be, just Teddy Two Gloves doing what he does. And you're likely, like you said, you lowered the distribution down to like 8 or 9 wins, which is very narrow, but honestly probably fair. So it was fun giving Siege shit because he was dead set on this not happening. But otherwise, this was kind of a non-starter for me. I didn't care. I guess if you bet against this team in some alt totals, I would have loved to see some some Drew Lock in there, just because it does change up the complexion of just how good or how bad this team might be. But I don't have a lot of outside of them to win the division in the Super Bowl, which I needed. Neither of these men. I needed a trade for Rodgers or Watson. Neither happened. So those are dead. Those are dead rubbers just because we didn't get that to happen. And yeah, honestly, it wasn't like the biggest news to me. I was assuming this would happen. I didn't care what the silly prop market said. Like, I thought like he's going to go with the safe choice and rely on defense. He's a defensive head coach. Is like, well, we'll just rely on our defense and we'll go with the safer quarterback.
Okay, so who are the biggest winners then of the Teddy Two Gloves decision? They are the two teams we are about to talk about, because both the Chargers and the Chiefs are capable of scoring 30 points on you in any given game. And now the Broncos, I don't have in that category. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Teddy Two Gloves takes a huge step forward. Maybe Matt Rule and Joe Brady were holding him back last year by not practicing enough red zone and, end of game 2-minute drill. But ultimately, I don't see this as a team that can score 30 points, even though they've got lots of weapons and a decent O-line anymore. And just the combination of Pat Shurmur and Teddy Bridgewater, this team now has a ceiling of about 24 points in most games, in my opinion. So offensive downgrade for them, which helps the Chargers and the Chiefs. Let's talk about the Chargers, and let's talk about their 2020 season, which was a perfect bow on the Anthony Lynn era. Really?
Yeah,
it was a good bow on the era, man. Because it was another year.
I want to save a lot of it.
Okay.
For coaching. Like, I want to save a lot of this for when we do talk about the coaching upgrade. I don't know how much we need to talk about some of these games. I think we're going to dig into that enough when we do the autopsy on Anthony Lynn. Not literally. He is still with us. In fact, he got a job, obviously. Everyone does when they get fired. But it was, if you want to concentrate on the positive, like, we are not good evaluators of college quarterbacks. We never have been. Maybe someday we will be. But, like, people a lot smarter than us thought Herbert was a reach. It was a bad pick. And we were like, well, we're not going to find out because they have, again, it's like the Teddy thing. Oh, here's the safe choice. We'll go with Tyrod. I'm Anthony Lynn, and I need to save my job. And even with the season that has, it's wild that it still didn't happen there. But, they got rid of Rivers. It'd been 15 years since he hadn't been on the team, and they started Tyrod Taylor. And it took a week for the medical staff to do something wild like they always do. Punctured his lung, and all of a sudden you got Herbert. And Herbert played, I don't know, it was a team effort, obviously. But those first couple games, it's like, wow, this is like a thing. Like, he's straight on good. I think probably outside of him just being good, I was a little surprised at the record. Like, I thought they had one more win, honestly. I remember this being a little better of a team record-wise. It wasn't. They lost a lot of games. Again, starting a rookie quarterback, losing somebody like James right away, losing some other pieces to injuries, as will happen when you are the Chargers. But it felt like this team was better. And was that because of all the Herbert hype? Like, that we were just excited off the get-go, and he was good immediately, and everyone was pumped, and it's like, oh, there goes Rookie of the Year. And in that first game, they actually led the Chiefs at halftime. The Chiefs I think there was an overtime there. I think they went to overtime 3 or 4 times. It was a
1 and 2
traditional Chargers season of close endings. Yeah. But yeah, outside, I didn't have a lot of things to say about specific games. I'm going to save a lot of that for when we get to the coaching and the coaching change, because I think a lot of the biggest talking point here is, and I hate to use the cliche, but like it's alliteration. That's why it's a thing. But sophomore slump is a thing. Like, there's just people got time to spend time checking out this offense, out this quarterback, and now they kind of figured him out. He's not going to be as good, or just all the pressure on him now, or just that's like the perfect way to start an NFL game, is not knowing you're going to start it until the other quarterback is down a lung. And it's like, oh, hey, guess what, you're in? Because that was not that far from game time, if I remember right.
Yeah,
that was like
right. It was literally in warm-ups for the Kansas City game, week 2. It was pregame.
So like, I would love that if I was the quarterback. Like, all right, I'm going.
And he was.
I don't know your takeaways.
Yeah,
from the
season?
You're.
I think I get what you're saying. And yes, right away He looked like the real deal. He went for 300 yards passing against the Kansas City Chiefs, ran for a touchdown, had them in position to pull off the impossible upset as like 10-point dogs or something at home. I don't exactly remember what they were as far as underdogs go, but it was a big number. Then the next weekend, he throws for 300 again. Again, has them in position to get a win, but ultimately loses at home to Carolina. And yeah, then went toe-to-toe with Tom Brady in Tampa. The third week, 290 yards passing, including a couple of deep beauties where he beat a Tampa Bay defense that was playing well and playing aggressively. Scores 31 points on Tampa. That was eye-opening. Goes toe-to-toe with Drew Brees, week 5 at New Orleans. Loses by 3, and then also in a very impressive game. So he had his first 4 starts were all L's, but you came away with the distinct impression that this guy can play. He finally gets a win against Jacksonville. 3 more losses at Denver, home against the Raiders, at Miami. And so at this point in his young career, he is 1-7. Yet he was clearly in the driver's seat for the Offensive Rookie of the Year because he was putting up eye-popping passing numbers, both yards and touchdowns. 4 passing touchdowns against the very tough New Orleans secondary, 3 against Tampa, 3 against the Jags, 3 against the Jets. Obviously, the Jags and the Jets were giving up passing touchdowns to everyone. But nonetheless, the reason we think of it as such a successful season, and the reason that you may be kind of scratching your head as to, whoa, they were only 7-9, was they won their last 4. And when you finish on a 4-game winning streak, because clearly this team was not in contention to win not contention to go to the playoffs, when they lost to the Patriots 45-0 at home to drop them to 3-9. Season was over, and you're thinking about 2021 at that point.
Yeah.
But they reeled off 4 straight wins, and it was against weak competition up until you beat the B team for Kansas City week 17. So la-di-da. But there was a decent buzz about this team and the rookie quarterback, and he got an award. That's obviously changes perception to a degree. The enormous questions now about Herbert and what he gives you this year. Does he take a step forward, or is this a sophomore slump season? And I guess I didn't have a strong opinion one way or the other about him. I thought I was pretty strongly on the corner of Tua is a risk because of the injury, but I didn't have a strong take on Herbert either way.
Yeah.
And so I was just sort of like, oh, we'll see. This might work. They have good weapons, whatever. But other people were pretty sure he was not going to work out. And I think, would you say it's fair that the major takeaway of that was evaluating a player based on college statistics may be a muddy data set clouded by the offensive system he's playing under, both from maybe say Oklahoma and Oregon?
Yeah, and that's the thing. We're gonna find out in a hurry on that. Like, it's tough. It's tough to use some of that data because people can say like, "Oh, Alabama quarterbacks haven't worked out." Like, yeah, I get that it's been multiple times, and McCarron, and oh my God, I'm trying to think of some of those. They all had the same haircut. They all look it's like Duke. Like every Duke point guard looks the same.
Sure.
But a bunch of those didn't work out. A bunch of Alabama running backs did make it, and you get this, it's a thing, like it's a thing, or like Iowa tight ends, like it's a thing, and Notre Dame offensive linemen, which absolutely is a thing. They just coach those up. Like, I can see it being a positive, but the negative of like, hey, this just hasn't worked out. It hasn't worked out. We see, teams or people dogging on Lance because he played at a D3 school or D2, what have you. You get people dogging on maybe Wilson this year because he played such a soft schedule. It's like, it's hard to tell. Like, the only one that was like real is like Mitch Trubisky is a super big risk just because he hasn't hardly played at all. I guess Lance feels that too. And I think I was one of those where it's like, shit, I don't know. I'm washed. I don't stay up and watch West Coast football. Like, I'm not sure I've seen this guy play. It's on too damn late. So I did watch some highlights, but I mean, everything I read, people were out on him. And yeah, I think it's maybe the most difficult job in the NFL is being the people that evaluate the quarterback, because it's so much hinges. It's not calling a play or putting together a scheme for an entire game. I mean, this could set you up or screw you over for a few years making the right or wrong call on this. So very difficult. It doesn't surprise me that we're wrong more often than we're right on these quarterbacks. Big Josh Rosen guy checking in. A hater of Baker Mayfield. We did like Lamar. Let's pat ourselves on the back on that. Tua, I wasn't sure. I thought the Lions still should have taken him. That was a weird spot, and then the trade that they didn't make. But yeah, Herbert, we were kind of iffy on. Iffy is probably too soft a word. Like, we were a little down on that pick and pleasantly surprised. And yeah, I think with some of the things I read and saw regarding the coaching last year and the offense last year, I'm more bullish on him playing well this year. So I don't know. Outside of, if we get into changes,
I guess I just to put a bow on his 2020 season. I don't want to get too much into
staying on the
stats,
offensive
but I
side.
do think there's a potential that because his counting stats were so eye popping that the evaluation of him is a little glossy. It's a little, it's a little positive. He got broke the rookie passing yardage or whatever for 4,300 passing yards, 31 passing touchdowns, only to 10 interceptions. So, I mean, I know when you see a rookie do that sort of thing in 15 games, it's like, you have to take notice. You have to. But at the same time, there were some other things about his game that were pretty questionable, and we'll get to those when we get to the specific in-depth on Herbert. Oh, the haircut was brutal.
Brutal.
You want to guess where Herbert landed in terms of EPA per play among starting quarterbacks last year?
He had this weird thing where he was really good in the first half. But yeah, probably middle of the pack, 15,
he was
16.
Good. He was up in the my sorting is not working right now. He was 16th.
He didn't have
his
many
completion
mistakes.
Percentage over expectation was lower than some other notable quarterbacks, but his EPA per play was 12th. So he was top half of the league in EPA per pass, in the ballpark with Mayfield, Drew Brees, and Lamar Jackson, just above Matthew Stafford and Russell Wilson. So
just where you want to be in that Drew Brees, right in that 2020 Drew Brees range. That's funny. Dude. And that just, again, that speaks to Sean Payton and what they did with that offense with Drew Brees.
Not super close to Drew Brees in both CPOE and EPA per play, like super close. But all that said, the thing that stood out to me the most about his 2020 campaign was his deep ball was beautiful. It was beautiful. When he had time to pass, his receivers created separation down the field. He was lethal. There were a couple of very notable deep balls that he threw over the course of the regular season that were like stand up and clap, even if you didn't have a bet on the Chargers.
It's funny that you would choose that too, because that is one of the things that have been shown to be highly variant year over year.
Of course.
That's the toughest part. It's like, oh man, the guy has a good deep
bunch
ball.
More. Yeah.
There's
a bunch more.
People with good deep balls have bad years with the deep ball, and it's like, and we'll get to him. Mahomes, his deep ball wasn't great last year. It's not because he didn't throw a good deep ball. It's a highly variant play that you don't throw. You're not throwing 15, 20 deep balls a game. It is going to be, there's going to be a lot of variance. So yeah, I'm going to get to him a little more when we get to coaching. In the changes, the changes for the 2020 season, honestly, outside of a lot of it was defensive, I suppose. Really, really don't know what to make of this Slater. I know you've converted me. I'm a full team. Hey, if you didn't play last year, I'm leery. I'm a little wary of you. I'm not sure what's going to happen. So we've had some reports out of camp that Slater had some, and still, you're a rookie coming into the league, and you had a year off. It is what it is. But hopefully he's good. We liked him in college. We liked that pipeline coming up from Northwestern. and then Asante Samuel, and then the rest was outside of a couple nice offensive lineman signings. We talked about that with Green Bay. Lindsley ending up here. Feller. Jared Cook probably doesn't move the needle anymore. He's okay. But the biggest thing to me outside of on offensive side, the biggest thing for me is probably the coaching change.
Well,
as far as change, it just changed well above bringing in Slater, Lindsley, Feller. It's nice. Offensive line is good. We're going to get to that extensively with the Chiefs. Jared Cook doesn't move the needle. Like, I'm very excited about a coaching change. And then at the same time, it's like, man, you lost Casey Hayward. You lost Melvin Ingram. Like, is this defense going to stink? And then I say, Andy, like, maybe there's enough stars to offset scrubs, because this is the king of stars and scrubs. Like, maybe he can make this defense work. So I'm pretty wishy-washy on this team, just based on some of the unknowns and bringing in a defensive head coach, which I never love. And at the same time, I'm saying good things about it. So kind of speaking out of both sides of his mouth, Andy, this week.
Way to take a stand, Andy.
And again, way to take a stand. Asante Samuel Jr. probably going to work out eventually.
Yeah.
But Derwin James back from injury, you have some good names on that defense, but losing Hayward, losing Perriman, losing Ingram, and not having a high-end pick for a defense, and you pick the corner.
Hayward and Perriman don't really move the needle for me. Ingram obviously is a guy that
Ingram does.
You like to have multiplicity in your pass rush. You don't want to rely entirely on Joey Bosa here. But the entirety of their offseason, the thesis that they went into that offseason with was our offensive line is a problem and our coaching staff needs a rehaul. Or our coaching staff is a problem and our offensive line needs a rehaul. Both and likewise. 'Cause 4 new starters expected on this offensive line this year. You mentioned Slater, you mentioned Lindsley. Lindsley, by the way, coming from a Green Bay system where he was the center of a clear top 5 O-line for the last several years. So in general, that works out, would you say, when you bring in a new center, a guy that's like all pro level?
More times than not, that's a good move. Like, out of the moves, like, he moves the needle way more than
you can think of specific anecdotal examples, though, where a team brought in like an all pro center and it was like, holy crap, that whole line gelled. Like, it was like that, like one guy in the middle of that line can do solid things to kind of bring cohesion. I've noticed. Would you agree?
Or even just a high-end guard, even a high-end guard who you pair him with a good center. It's like, right, that kind of locked down that side. It made that tackle better. Like having. I mean, we talked about this on Monday. Having problems in the middle of the line is almost as bad as having a gate for a left tackle. So, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful for this team, and that's I'm gonna start taking points. It's like, that's point 1 for Herbert not being a wash this year, not being a sophomore slump. Improvements on the line, including a veteran center who we think will be a very nice addition. That should help. That's a good thing. And he already had, you can say, well, he didn't make much else to the offense. It's fair, but he already had a pretty good 1-2 punch at receiver.
They lose Hunter Henry.
Tight end. Yeah, I mean, that really sucks, and Jared Cook is absolutely not the replacement for that. But you have a nice 1-2 punch out wide, and you have a pretty good running back. Like, all things considered, you could do a lot worse for surrounding company as a quarterback in a team that I have no idea where they're at. It's like they've never been in a rebuild. They're just such a weird team year in and year out, where you just never know what you're going to get from this squad. But it's hard. Yeah, it's hard to say what part of a cycle they're in. But yeah, you could do a lot worse. You really could.
Realistically, I don't think tight end's a super important position for this team, because they're going to do a lot of 11 personnel. If I could tell you, you're going to have Keenan Allen and Mike Williams on the field for every single snap, and I would like to see a lot of Jalen Guyton out there. He was a surprise positive for them last year, particularly being able to create separation deep. So I think they have a nice 1-2-3 punch at wide receiver there. And Jared Cook obviously is a fumbling machine, even though he's a big target. I wouldn't be surprised if he
Sometimes.
ultimately doesn't have much of a role in this offense. So not a big deal to me. Let's talk about Herbert in a little more detail, because you brought up, I thought, a very valid point, which is, yes, his deep ball last year was amazing. However, how much can you count on that carrying over from year 1 to year 2? Not a lot changed in terms of his weapons and their ability to create separation down the field. So presumably the opportunity will still be there to make those plays. The offensive system has changed entirely because we now have, who's it, Joe Lombardi? Do I have that right? Joe Lombardi comes in. He was the quarterback coach.
Joe Lombardi,
at the
yeah, he was the
Saints.
New Orleans.
Joe Lombardi
quarterback
comes
coach.
in. He's now working with a quarterback who has a live arm for the first time in many years. So that'll be interesting to see what he has up his sleeve in terms of creating interesting, interesting offensive schemes. I don't have any expectation one way or the other what we're going to see there, but I do like a Keenan Allen and a Michael Thomas type of role for this offense. That would be exciting. But there are two enormous red flags when it comes to why you may expect regression from Justin Herbert in 2021. And I'm not subscribing to this, but we need to be forthright about, for the sake of completeness, we have to cover this.
Yeah, you got to look at both sides.
Justin
of the coin,
Herbert, EPA per drop back with no pressure, 21st in the NFL. Justin Herbert, EPA per drop back under pressure, number 2. That's weird. There's very little that I can tell you about him being able to do amazing things under pressure, meanwhile not being the same quarterback in a clean pocket. That gives you lots of good feelings of, well, they've done a great job of they've invested all this capital in the offensive line, so he's going to be under pressure less, and he'll be performing at a lower
Is he
level.
gonna be worse?
Obviously, his EPA
That's
per
not
play
good.
with no pressure was higher than it was under pressure, for sure. There's no doubt about that. He was negative EPA per play under pressure. Every single quarterback is, except for you want to guess? There's one quarterback in the NFL last year who had a positive EPA per play under pressure. You want to guess?
Like Rodgers.
Rodgers was number 10.
Wow. Allen.
Allen was number 3, just behind Herbert.
Oh, we're getting closer. I was just, as a joke, answer Kirk Cousins.
Kirk Cousins he is way down here.
Yeah. I was trying to go to the other end.
Oh no,
of the
Kirk
list.
Cousins was 7. He wasn't that bad. Yeah,
Really?
He was number 7. Wow.
Well, that's weird. Oh, he had Justin Jefferson.
Yeah,
he had
true.
good tight ends. Like, he could just whip it out
That's
there.
true.
That's true. I don't know. You'll have to tell me.
All right.
I got
Pat
close
Mahomes
with 3.
was number 4. Phillip Rivers was number 5. How about that? The number 1 QB and the only guy that had a positive EPA per pass under pressure was Ryan Fitzpatrick of the Miami Dolphins, 0.10.
Oh, God damn it. That makes
Number
sense.
1 EPA per play. Although he was also number 34 outside the pocket, which is also kind of wild. But no, the point is,
that's where I wonder about some of
succeeding,
these.
being
these
successful,
splits don't
being
make sense
successful, or
sometimes.
just being not garbage under pressure is not something you can count on, right? It's not a year-over-year statistic that has lots of carryover. Similarly with the deep ball, your ability to hit those EPA per plays on the deep pass, not exactly something you can count on in year 2, or just in a second for a second year. Although clearly there are quarterbacks that have the tools that he has that have done it for many years in a row, all of the Aaron Rodgers of the world, all of the Pat Mahomes of the world. Although pretty clearly, I don't think anyone at this point considers Justin Herbert in the discussion with those two players. So where is Herbert in your rankings expectation coming into the season?
We need 2 more years. He has such a wide distribution, man. Like, I hate just putting someone in a spot.
You gotta have some kind of rating.
It's easier with the guys
coming up with the number though. Where are you?
Yeah,
like 15?
Like 8 to 8. It's like 8 to 18, man. Like, his absolute. If he plays, it's like, oh my God, he just needed a different coach. Oh my God, this offensive line is keeping him clean, and the receivers are healthy, and it's not a huge drop off, and Eckler's great, and everything's working, and it's like, yeah, he's a top 10 quarterback. There's also like, some of those stats from a one-off year weren't super predictive. They brought in a defensive head coach. This guy Lombardi doesn't seem to know what he's doing. Nothing upgraded about the scheme. Then he's bottom half of the league for sure. But I'm still hopeful just because of the pieces he has around him. And we'll get to schedule, but it's not the worst schedule in the world either. They have some toughies. You got to play the Chiefs twice and the Ravens once, but other than that, the schedule is pretty forgiving for a second-year player. Again, I'll give him a point for that. I'll give him a point for the offensive line upgrade. I'll probably give him a point. And it's tough to say this because you can't do this and not do it for everyone. But to be fair, he did come in as a rookie and not have a preseason, not have a camp, not have anything, really not even have a clue he was going to be starting as soon as he did. So getting all the time with the ones, getting this time to prep, that's hopefully going to be a huge feather in his cap, something that helps him along. And then really like the play calling is weird. Like they took such a step back. The sequencing was so aft. And really, that might be what gets him to a ceiling he hasn't touched yet. They were bottom 5 in the league as far as a couple different offensive efficiency numbers on first down. Basically, their average second down was 2nd and 8. And then they had a weird ADOT, whereas okay, it's 2nd and 8. If we are throwing, we're gonna throw really short. Like when it was a weird second down, it's like those things don't jive. And then also when they did throw on first down, which we know is usually a positive, they threw to the running back more than anybody by a lot.
Right, for your passing, yeah.
That's usually a bad. Yeah, the swing past the running back when you have all those downs, it's not what you want to be doing. So they put themselves in bad positions, and they put Justin in bad positions, and he really was pretty good on third downs, especially in the first half of games. And just you can only do so much if you're constantly putting in bad positions by the play sequencing and calling. So, and that's unanswerable for me. Is hey, guess what? Well, it should get better. Will it? I don't know. It could get worse. It's not like they were the worst team in the league at this. So Lombardi's never called plays. He was a quarterback coach down there. I'm sure he had input, but I don't know much about this. It could get worse. If it does get better, I'm hopeful. And this soft schedule and more preparation, better offensive line, and all these weapons.
He was an
enigma, a top 10 guy.
Really. Everything you mentioned is true. He was great on 3rd and 4th downs, terrible in the 4th quarter. He was great under pressure and trying to throw the deep ball, but brutal on first downs with the passes to the running backs. And some of that was scheme, absolutely. Speaking of scheme, I will buy you a Pittsburgh Pirates Gavin Weir jersey if you can tell me who the Los Angeles Chargers offensive coordinator was last year. I'll even give you.
I saw this. I literally read this. I read his name when I was doing some prep this afternoon, and I'm like, who are? Yeah,
this year
I can't remember
he is the offensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Where did Gus Bradley go? No, I know. We were just talking about him the other day. Now I'm thinking about all these. It's funny how these people just get retreaded all over the place. Oh, man. Give me. Yeah, I can't get it. I guess I don't get my weird.
Shane Steichen. Shane Steichen.
Steichen. I know I read this. Yes.
Shane Steichen was the offensive coordinator last year.
And was he was in his first year?
Yes, he was. He had been elevated from quarterbacks to interim offensive coordinator the prior year, probably when they fired Gus Bradley, and then into offensive coordinator for 2020. He is now the offensive coordinator for the Eagles. Okay. In the past, Steichen has worked for Mike McCoy, Noah Turner, Anthony Lynn, Rob Chudzinski. So not an illustrious coaching tree, but that's okay. Yeah, no, I mean, I honestly, let's move to coaching because this is a great segue. I do think from everything we've heard from Brandon Staley that we can expect them to do a more plus EV approach to an offensive scheme. And
Yes.
is that, is Lombardi bringing anything over from New Orleans? That's amazing. That's that it's replicatable from what New Orleans has done over the years. That's been so impressive. Maybe, but I think
They've been very flexible.
Staley's much more. I'll believe it until I don't see it. That he will play aggressively. He will pass early on. He'll pass on early downs. Will be aggressive in terms of when to go for it on fourth down and setting himself up for makeable fourth downs in the right part of the field. Like he does say and seemingly genuinely believe a lot of the stuff that the analytics community would support. And so there's a chance that, there's a chance that he ends up being a higher plus EV game manager than his former boss, Sean McVay. I don't think that's crazy. When he's kicking field goals, when he's going for it, all of that stuff we'll have to evaluate it on the fly and see what we think. But at this point, I am optimistic. I am cautiously optimistic is the right word.
Yeah. I don't have a ton to say on this because a lot of it would just be guessing. I like where he came from. I like the things he's saying. I don't know a bunch about Lombardi, but I like where he came from, especially from an offensive philosophy. Like those guys made do. Hey, he's hurt again. We got to start a tight end. We got to start Teddy. Okay, let's just win all but one of those games over a couple of years. Hey, we're going to draft a bunch of players and put them wherever, and it's all going to work out. Hey, we're going to get another star receiver. Marquez Callaway looks good too. It's just things work out for the Saints, and a lot of that is coaching, being flexible. You see they bring people in, try to change them. You're going to do this now. It's the Twins tried to make David Ortiz a singles hitter. Seeing how that turned out. Had to get rid of him. Didn't work out. And
he was a bust,
to become the star of many commercials. Yeah, he was a bust from there. I'll have to go check. I didn't follow baseball that closely, but yeah, this is my last thing. I'm just going to shit on Lynn for a few minutes. Is the obscene amount of one-score games they lost could be luck over the last 2 years, more than anybody. More games than anybody that they led at half and lost. That they led in the fourth quarter and lost. That could just be variance, deviance, luck. But coaching, culture, decision-making, probably a little column A, a little column B, and maybe in this case a hefty serving of column B and coaching, culture, and decision-making because Lynn was horribly timid on fourth downs, especially when they start tracking. Now you say, the analytics say, well, no, everybody has the analytics for the most part. You have it, there's tracking companies that say, we think you should go on it. They're fourth down bots and stuff like that. And some of the ones where most of those analytics companies agree, that should have been a go for it spot. In those spots, he's going for it 25% of the time. It's not going to get you. That's how you lose close games is just a multitude of small decisions that go the wrong way. And yeah, the most loss, like I said, most losses over the past 2 seasons where they led at halftime, losing almost half those games. The average is 80% if you lead at halftime. Just absolutely not closing games. And again, as far as the upgrade goes, I did mention this already. If I'm worried about this defense, I mean, we saw Staley do a pretty good job in the old Stars and Scrubs up in LA. He made that defense click with some big names and people that were just kind of there, replacement level players. So I'm excited for the coaching on both sides of the ball, just what Staley brings from a defensive, scheme and however he motivated those teams to do what they did. And obviously, yeah, it's fun having those corners. It's fun having Aaron Donald in the middle. But there was some spots in those defense where they were missing some talent. He made very good on that. And if he lets Lombardi do what he does, and he's more aggressive and he's more analytically driven, I'm hopeful for this team. Again, this is a tough team to evaluate for the last 20 years.
We haven't mentioned Derwin James coming back off of injury. He is obviously an extremely dynamic playmaker and sort of the jack of all trades that fits into a Brandon Staley style system. Really, 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 really good fit between Derwin James and Brandon Staley. Similarly, Joey Bosa, a guy that you can use in various ways across your defensive line to create pressure. Awesome. The rest of the defensive line, Linval Josephs, Tillery, Nwosu,
Linval Joseph's getting up there,
he's a
but
big
he's
dude.
a big
Yeah,
man.
but
Like,
I don't know you're using.
but he's
not
not young.
and I don't know that you're using him in you're not putting him on the twist. You're not. I don't think you're asking him to do.
Oh, he's a run stopper.
I don't think
for
you're
sure.
asking him
That's
to do
it.
especially sophisticated action there. So, a little bit of a depth question mark there, a little bit of a depth question mark at the linebacker position as well. But great secondary. Asante Samuel already looks like a smash. And really expecting this defense to be in the top half of the NFL this season, I think is completely reasonable. Do you have a guess as to what the market is power rating this defense right now?
Oh, I would say they're probably a little down on the front four because of the loss. And honestly, you lost as much as it's not as a big of a deal for some of the other losses. You lost somebody at every level. You do get Derwin James back.
Very
like
good guess.
20th?
They're in the same ballpark as the Arizona Cardinals and the Tennessee Titans in the eyes of the market right now. So
it feels bad to put
it doesn't
them in there
feel
with
great.
Tennessee.
Yeah, no, it doesn't really feel great.
No.
Okay, so they'll overachieve to a degree. This defense is better than that, particularly if Derwin James is healthy all
I
season.
think we're agreed.
The one thing I wanted to point out about this team in particular, and where regression could sneak up on them to a degree, and I forgot about this until I was looking detailed into the stats for Herbert last year. He got sacked a lot. And that obviously begot, hey, we need to do a better job of pass pro. And so we invest a lot in the offensive line. He fumbled 8 times, only lost 1. That is a little fluky.
That seems sustainable.
That seems sustainable. Realistically, I don't know if you can expect him to only lose 1 fumble again this year, but that's somewhat questionable. The schedule, let's take a quick look, is not especially spooky, really.
It is, yeah. You get the Vikings and the Texans as 2 of your playing a whole division thing. They have some good situational stuff, and they play the NFC East. Like, it's not the toughest landing. I think every time we run through one of these, we're gonna have the same thing. It's like, oh my god, they play a bunch of early games.
Oh yeah.
Like this is another
5.
one where they play
Yeah.
5 games. It's weird so they'll play 5 games as a West Coast team early in an East Coast time slot, which isn't great. But this is even weirder. Maybe not weird. I'm sure it happens every year. They get 6 teams who will face the Chargers in LA as the second leg of a back-to-back road. That can't happen a lot. Like 6 of your 8 home games, you're facing someone who just played a different road game. I'd say that's advantageous.
And 3 of them
sure.
are coming from the East Coast to LA. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's nice. So that kind of counteracts that. They get that rough patch there with the double against Denver and Cincy. At least it's Cincy, I guess. It's a lower end team, but you get Denver off the bye and you have to play them at their house up at altitude, followed by one of your trips east to Cincy. And then maybe a nice little spot against the Patriots where you'll need that extra time to out scheme, the schemers. I'm not saying they're cheaters, just schemers.
Yeah. I mean, realistically, there's only 5 games on your schedule.
It's not an awful schedule. Really, the only bad part is
there's only 5 games on your schedule. Your 2 Kansas City head-to-heads and your Baltimore on the road, where you are a meaningful dog. Otherwise, this is an enormous slate of coin flips. Enormous. 10 games here lined inside 3 points. Most of them, they are small favorites, small chalk. So I mean, expectations are pretty high for this team. If the regression is in any way, shape, or form positive for these guys, injury wise, sophomore slump is not a thing. The coaching upgrade is real. This is a 10-win team, I think, pretty comfortably, which puts them 100% in the conversation for a wild card, if not competing for the AFC West.
Six spot.
Yeah, I mean, this looks like your 6th seed, if you had to say so, right?
Yeah, I mean, some things need to fall in place. And again, if we see some of the things with Herbert weren't sustainable, and we were like, oh,
know
look
right
at
away.
us.
Yeah.
We were right. We were right. It was a bad draft pick. This was dumb. You guys were dumb for drafting him. But yeah, if that happens, I think that's about it. That's the only way you can end up having a real disastrous season. Otherwise, yeah. 9,
Maybe,
10, 11, 12 wins.
If you got to win a lot of coin flips to get to 12, but for sure, if because again,
they're due to win some
coin flips, and
that's not a thing.
Right now, their power rating is 16th in the NFL. That can go up. You could get an upgrade in the eyes of the market if you if you win your coin flips early on this schedule, particularly those first two. I don't have any action on Chargers Washington, but that's one of the most anticipated early season games that I can tell you in the entirety of the NFL. That is going to be super, super informative as to the state of both of those teams. And very cool that it is at Washington, which makes it pretty much a coin flip. Total's low. That's going to be a super, super fun one. Very excited for that game. Probably the best game in the 1 o'clock slate, although I haven't looked at it lately. Similarly, that game against Dallas, you come home, you host the Cowboys. You get to play a nice soft defense in week 2.
Yeah, Cowboys off a extra rest, but it was a nice defense
Cowboys
to test out Herbert again with. Yeah. Hey, there's a lot of these where the game planning is so different for like, oh my God, how are we going to break this Washington defense to the exact opposite the next week? Okay, we'll score.
You're going to get a wide range of game. You'll get to evaluate how they perform against two very different style of teams. Very much so.
Yeah, that's well said. After 2 weeks, you'll kind of know a lot about the offense and the defense right off the bat. You want to pull up those odds? Is it 9.5 for the win total?
It is 9.5 plus 110 to the over, minus 130 to the under.
Kind of a case for that.
Right now, the Chargers to win the Super Bowl are 30-1. That's a little shy by my numbers. I don't see Justin Herbert in his first ever playoff run going to and winning the Super Bowl, even though it is in LA. Super Bowl is in LA this year, and we are streaking of teams winning Super Bowls at home.
That's been a thing lately.
The AFC for the Chargers is 15-1. AFC West plus 475 to make the playoffs. Yes, plus 105, no, minus 130. Now we're talking. Over 9.5 plus 110. I'm inclined to look at that as well. 9 and 8, I don't think gets you into the AFC playoff picture. But considering their schedule, the number of coin flips on this rundown, to make the playoffs, yes, at plus 105 or over 9.5 plus 110 are fair plays in my book.
Yeah, whichever one has the higher price, because like you said, 9 and 8 probably doesn't get it done. You need 10 wins either way. Although you could get the 10 and not make it in the playoffs. We said there might be an 11-win team that misses if things really go haywire and it's super top heavy. So I'd probably lean towards more towards the win total. I think that's probably the safer play. But maybe if I was taking like a full unit, I'd bet like 3/4 on the win total and 1/4 on to make the playoffs, and hopefully you end up getting them both when they win like 11 games and sneak in as a 6 or 7 seed. So yeah, hit us with your takes if you have Herbert takes. I feel like that's a quarterback that's just not getting talked about, and it's really a product of the draft. The fact that we have 5 other rookie quarterbacks this year to start gabbing about, and then Tua is also coming up, and people are talking about some of the other second-year guys like Burrow, and boy, Yeah, Herbert. I haven't had conversations with anybody about him.
Same. Yeah.
You're like my first one.
I mean, I think it's been really, really fairly covered across the space. Like people breaking down all of these points. I think there's a case that regression is coming, but there's also a lot of positive upside with this team, with the coaching change. I think is really what it boils down to.
Yeah.
I mean, if things go sideways for these guys, it's because Herbert took an enormous step back, not just a little step back,
or an injury,
which never happens to the Chargers because they're definitely not cursed as a franchise.
They definitely didn't build their stadium on like a Native American burial ground or something.
Dean Spanos definitely.
Really, I was going to make fun of
the Pechanga Indio tribe in Southern California, but anyway, yeah, go ahead.
Chase Daniel is not the worst backup. He's always somebody's backup. He always plays. That's not a good sign. Point. That so. All right, on to Kansas City. Let's crush the last team in the AFC West. Obviously the favorites. Obviously the big one. I made a case on Brown Pack Bets a few weeks ago while I was drinking on vacation for an under 12.5 on this because I did see some problems with this team, maybe some things to step them back. Let me cue up the 2020 season. Everybody knows it ended in disappointment. That sucks. It's very, very, very hard to repeat. And the injuries didn't help. Losing some key pieces on that offensive line, really, really poor timing for that. And also you went up against a hot-ass team with a stacked-ass roster. And really probably one of the only guys outside of New England that I'd consider a Andy Reid peer. I still think he's a very high-end coach. And everything came together. They won 3 road games, got to play the Super Bowl at home. The season ended in disappointment, which is what happens when you draft a running back in the first round. Remember that, GMs. This is what will happen to you. You don't want to do it. I actually like Hilaire, but it wasn't the Patriots level, but they had the one guard opt out. I can never remember his name. He's up for comeback player of the year for some reason. That's Duvernay. Duvernay. Damian Williams opted out for COVID. They're 14-2, and I'm like, oh shit! It was another one of those where it's like, man, were they? That's crazy. And then I looked and like, this was an easy schedule. Christ, they only played 4 teams that made the playoffs. They actually beat all 4 of those teams. Their losses were to the Raiders and Chargers, who for some reason gave them a lot of trouble. All 4 Raiders and Chargers games were 2 of them were losses, and the other 2 they won by a combined 7 points. They had a lot of close games. They actually did play a lot, and we talked about this ad nauseum. There was a couple of those that shouldn't have been close. They were really letting people in the back door. If you're a live over better, they were a dream. But the Raiders and Chargers games, honestly, I think it was 1 Broncos game. They beat them pretty well. But 5 out of the 6 divisional games last year, they either lost or won by less than a score because both those other games were close. And then 1 Broncos game, they won by 6. So they kind of had some trouble with the division. And, the Raiders gave people fits if your defense wasn't playing well. That was probably my biggest disappointment for a Chiefs team that we got involved in early in the season. They spent a shitload on the defense, and it wasn't all that good. And, things happen, and not everything works out all the time, and there's injuries. But they had a pretty hefty penny stuck into a defense, and it just didn't pan out like maybe some people thought it would. I thought it would be a lot better. Maybe that was a part of letting people in the back door. And, yeah, they were weird second half of the game monsters. Like, not only coming out – I don't know. Some people shit on Andy Reid's halftime adjustments. I want to give credit to the defensive, like Spags' halftime adjustments are great. They shut people down. They were like the Warriors.
I didn't hear much of that.
I had a couple of people say that. Like, yeah, he's really good at prepping. He's not great at halftime adjustments. I'm like, I think maybe if that's true, maybe it gets lost because he makes such good in-game decisions usually. But yeah, Spags was a monster in the third quarter. They shut teams down, and I've seen some stats about how they scored a lot in the fourth, and they needed to. And I think it might be more of a thing if they needed to more often. you don't score a lot in the fourth when you're up by multiple scores, I believe is probably what the case was in previous years. So that said, they were the biggest overperformer by Pythag, 3+ games. They should have been an 11-win team,
I
roughly.
take exception to that.
I could give them. I'm going. Before you even get to it. Yes, that is strictly based off points given up. I don't think the 3 is accurate because, like I just said 3 times, they gave up so many garbage points they shouldn't have. I think they did overperform their Pythag, but they should have been maybe like a game and a half and not 3. Like, this is a 13-win team. This is a 12-win team that had bad luck. This is not an 11-win team ever, just based off that schedule. They didn't score big time against some teams they could have. They had some weird turnovers in the red zone that are, not usual for them. And they let a bunch of teams just score a bunch on them that didn't matter. So I think, is that where you're going with that? Because I think that's kind of where
it was. It was.
I disagree with the Pythag a little. Context to the Pythag.
Great example. The Tampa Bay game, they won by 3 in regular season, 27-24. My expected margin, considering how those 2 teams played, 7.5. The Miami Dolphins game, that was a 6-point game. Yes, granted, this was borne out in almost entirely of turnovers by, the Dolphins forced Pat Mahomes into 3 or 4 turnovers that were pretty brutal. But realistic margin there should have been 12. Realistic margin against New Orleans, 11. This one's the one that I lose my shit over because I had KC -3. My realistic margin there was 12 points. There was a bunch of these. I think they should have beat the Raiders the second time they played them by 8.5. They should have beat the Panthers by 5. They beat them by 2. So yeah, there were a number.
They were like 11-point favorites to the Panthers.
I definitely took the Panthers.
Didn't we bet that?
Game. Absolutely. Yeah. No.
I think we took a
grabbing
number on that
boatload of points with a bad team in Arrowhead was a good bet last year, except for the Jets, obviously. Right? You could have taken a whole bunch of points with the Raiders. They win outright. A whole bunch of points with the Panthers, 2-point game. Whole bunch of points with the Broncos, was an 8-point game. Whole bunch of points with the Falcons, 3-point game. Actually, interestingly enough, I think the Chiefs should have lost that game based on the way I break that box score down. But yeah, it was a bizarre season.
The Miami game?
No, the Miami. I think they should have won the Miami game by more than 6, but they covered. The
Miami game was weird.
Miami covered that one.
Yeah.
No, this was a wild, insane season for these guys in terms of covering or not covering over the course of the season. They were a strong bet against on the point spread for most of the season. You didn't really pay a price if you were backing the Chiefs, particularly on the money line in the playoffs until the Super Bowl. It was but the Super Bowl itself was a really interesting game. We probably ought to give it let's give the 3 playoff games more than just a second here. The Browns game was weird because of the injured Mahomes. Don't really know what to make of it. The Bills game was classic playoff Mahomes read. Go down early, bend but don't break, come back and just scoring in droves, bury your opponent, suck the life out of them.
Yeah. We saw this last year. They do this. This is what happened.
Yes,
we've gotten used to it.
I was like, deja vu all over again. The Super Bowl, Tampa Bay obviously played their best game of the entire season, specifically on defense, holding the Chiefs to 9 points. That was really something, man. That was something. Love to know what the odds on the exact score of 9 points or even just the under 10 team total for the Chiefs was in that one, because to that point in the entirety of the Andy Reid Pat Mahomes marriage, I think what was their floor? Their floor was like in the low 20s, right?
23,
something like that. Yeah, it was the Falcons. I guess they only scored 17 against the Falcons, but their floor was not especially low. So to only get 9 was a shocker. Tampa Bay, obviously, perfect game plan in that one. Get out to a lead, and then what was interesting to me, beyond just the fact that obviously the weak link was the Chiefs offensive line completely prevented them from doing anything. That was the game plan A, and really, turned Pat Mahomes into full-on Alliance of Magicians artist. He was doing some absolute insane things. You took him
I
seriously?
took him serious.
Oh, yes. Okay.
He was, and to be fair to Patrick, he was carrying some, and getting the bye week before help, but he was carrying some injuries as well.
It didn't seem like
it wasn't.
Affected.
It sucked.
But
like
the offensive line was
yeah, I thought the foot injury, like right away, it's like I don't know if it's actually hurting him. He's got enough Toradol in that leg to knock out a horse.
Yeah, but it was it was I guess the interesting thing beyond the offensive line sucking in that game is the Chiefs defense really couldn't get off the field. They couldn't stop the run. They couldn't keep Tampa Bay from killing the clock, driving in a couple of key moments in the second half. Like even at halftime, we did a halftime show. I'd love to see what kind of state of sobriety I was in. I'm sure it was not sober. But I was not prepared to close the door on the Chiefs for the season. I thought still in the back of my head, they have a chance. They have Mahomes. They can score 28 points in a quarter. It's not over yet. But the Tampa Bay Buccaneers made an emphatic statement that it was over because they just drove for just monumental drives in the second half of that game to eat clock. And Leonard Fournette was great. Go figure. I eat some crow on that one because I was a noted Leonard Fournette hater last year. But yeah, I mean and honestly, like
that's what the Bucs did. They made everybody so good.
They did. And I honestly, ultimately, I don't have a real clear vision that what we saw in that game was fluky, right? Like that didn't, sometimes when teams suck it up, stink it out, and you're like, well, got out of bed on the wrong side of the bed, and everything went wrong, and like that was their bad game, right? Like that didn't feel like an unfair result. Am I correct?
No, it didn't. And yeah, the injuries sucked, but everyone's like, oh, the offensive line was hurt. And like, yeah, I mean, you got to give Tampa a lot of credit for that defense. But the biggest sticking point for me was like they couldn't stop anything. They couldn't stop the run when it wasn't OJ in that backfield. That wasn't AP in his prime. I mean, just not being able to stop the run was like, oh, this game is over. Like it's over, and I don't even believe that. The Chiefs can come back and score a bunch, but they're never going to stop this team. Speaking of AP, it's like Boise State once they got to overtime in that game. Oh, we're not going to stop them anymore. We better get the Statue of Liberty play out. That's our we have to end this now, or AP is going to have an infinity 25-yard touchdown runs for however many overtimes there are. And they were just once they couldn't get off the field on defense, and we'll get to defense. Like I'm not super keen on the defense again this year. I am happy about some of the changes we saw on offense, maybe a little bit, especially on the offensive line. But they lost pieces there as well too. So do you want to get to changes?
Yeah,
then?
Basically we agree that was a fair result. They lost and they deserved.
Yeah, it was a fair result, and yeah, they played a really, really, really good team. Like that was one of that run through the playoffs. Like I don't know if I've seen a team get quite that hot in the playoffs since, I hate to say it, but Joe Flacco. Like that team was just, even again, like that Denver team was better than them, but like sometimes just everything clicks and everybody plays so well. It's like, oh, this team is gonna win.
Are you saying Tom Brady is
and the Bucs? They haven't lost. He is probably in the Joe Flacco elite era.
In the conversation.
Like, he's had his share of fucking defenses help him out too. So anyway, the biggest change for me was a non-change, the fact that they retained their offensive coordinator. Huge bump. Not losing Bieniemy, who interviewed God knows how many times. I won't even get into the politics of that. He should have had a job. He doesn't. So you keep your whole coaching staff together from a very good team. You get Pat healthy. You add they didn't have a first-round pick, and it was because they traded for Orlando Brown Jr. I was looking him up. I accidentally clicked his dad instead, and I'm like, "Oh my god, what happened?" I'd
He's
forgotten
quite
he passed.
old.
It was like 10 years
Orlando
ago.
Brown passed away.
Yeah, R.I.P. Orlando Brown
Senior.
Sr., but Orlando Brown Jr. they traded for, and really getting the 31st pick, getting a pretty decent offensive lineman, start at left tackle, like that's probably better than what you're going to draft there. So don't hate the trade. Nothing really super exciting in the draft, but they did sign Joe Thuney for a bunch of money. They added another offensive
Trey
lineman
Smith.
somewhere. I'm going to have to, I think.
Steal of the draft.
Trey Smith, there we go.
Steal of the draft.
There was, yeah, all the way down at the bottom of the draft.
Incredible.
That was their last pick.
Trey
like they got an SEC, yeah, they got an SEC lineman very late. I'm looking at the rest. Yeah, a Duke tight end. I'm not like. I guess you did draft some depth. You got a Creed Humphrey from Oklahoma. The linebacker, I don't know much about this Bolton kid, but the Thuney signing, getting somebody very deep in the draft that might be a decent, if nothing else, depth. Getting Brown, getting a center, and I'm trying to think Blythe.
Creed Humphrey and Blythe.
Mike Remmers.
I think Creed Humphrey. It looks like Creed Humphrey's going to get the starting gig.
Creed Humphrey was the rookie. Yeah. So, I mean, it speaks to how well Oklahoma offensive linemen and quarterbacks going like hotcakes the last few years. And then Kyle Long out of retirement. That's a thing.
He's on.
I don't know how I feel about those. Yeah, I mean, he's injured already, and I don't know. Like, I'm not excited about that. It did happen, though. So not a lot of changes. The biggest changes for me were probably like the fact that they didn't stick a bunch into the defense. You got what's your favorite positive change on the defense?
Maybe that the Frank Clark era is over. I don't know. Frank Clark is going to make way for someone else to come in and get some reps. I honestly don't have a favorite move on the defense. I didn't really like anything that the defense did.
Yeah.
Here's my general feeling about the off season for the Chiefs, and a lot of teams fall into this trap, and it's funny to see that the Chiefs are just like everyone else, where they're just
celebrities.
Like all they remember is the last thing that happened to them in the season, and the entire focus of their off season becomes that thing, as opposed to evaluating all of the issues on the roster and trying to distribute your capital across everything. So rather than trying to address every problem, all they did was, well, we lost the Super Bowl because our offensive line, so let's invest everything we have and completely restock this room with draft choices, free agents, and trade pieces. And that may work. You may have solved that problem. This offensive line could entirely be a top 10 offensive line this year once they get a little bit of cohesion. They might not even need time. They might be out of the gate one of the best. Who the hell knows? But they did not address a number of other potential issues across this roster. And I will start with the wide receiver position. We have Tyreek Hill and a bunch of guys that we have massive question marks about. I will then go to the defensive side of the ball, where you have Chris Jones that can create pressure and a bunch of guys that cannot. They have go ahead.
It's like I'm like, I like Chris Jones and I like Matthew, and I'm not sure I like much else here.
Snead's okay. I'll take a Legarius.
Yeah, like Hughes might be okay. You have some okay coverage, but I'm not liking the front seven whatsoever. And can the defense take a step back? Like, yeah, the coverage is going to be better than your front four, front seven, but the rest of it is like, well, what's the floor for this? Like 22, 23?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's being positive, to be honest. The floor for this defense in terms of overall
I have
ranking,
them around 20th.
Yeah, no, I think they could end up worse than that for sure. If teams figure out ways to put 2-3 hats on Chris Jones, there are a lot of ways to attack this defense. Really, lots of them. And in general, we know defense to be realistically, it's a it's a weak link system, and there's lots of weak links that will be on the field at every moment. Defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo, realistically, over the last 2 seasons, has gotten way above the talent level production out of this defense, ultimately, especially on their end of the season run through to the Super Bowl against the Niners. That Spags defense was playing out of their minds. And I think realistically, this is bottom half of the league defense from a talent standpoint, which puts a ton of pressure on your franchise quarterback, Pat Mahomes. I mean, he's going to have to make the most, of another offensive year where he has 2 of the most dynamic weapons in the game, and Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill, and really not anyone else to hang your hat on. Clyde Edwards-Helaire already hurt? Question mark.
Already hurt? Maybe. I am hopeful for him. I think he can have a good career. He has the weapons to be the kind of running back who can do a few different things and stick around rather than be replaced after 4 years, or less. But yeah, the defense, and my biggest issue with the defense is if you look at the strength of schedule, it's not bad. Like, the strength of schedule is decent, but at the same time, again, the coverage unit is better than the front 4, the front 7, whatever. I guess you still have to count your linebackers in the coverage. I'm not so keen on that sometimes. But if you're looking at the teams who are succeeding, obviously you're seeing good aerial attacks. It's 2021. We throw the ball now. Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, Tannehill and that group with Brown and everybody, Josh Allen and, Measles and Diggs. You have the Cowboys if that decides to work out. You have the Browns. You have, honestly, if Big Ben isn't dead, like, they have a lot of receivers. You have the Steelers. You have the Baltimore Ravens, who are maybe not the most aerial, but that's a very challenging offense to play. You have the Chargers we just spoke about twice. You have Derek Carr, who's not going to wow you ever, but he's efficient as hell. And you got game manager Teddy with pretty good receiving core coming at you. You face some kind of tricky offenses. If your defense really stinks, that's my cold water. I think Patrick is fine. I think this offensive line is very good. Yes, the receiving is going to be an issue, and if that's an issue, that's probably my second cold water. My biggest cold water is, like, if the defense is towards the bottom end of their range, you're playing a lot of good offenses, even if it overall it's an easy-ish schedule sometimes.
Okay.
I'm a McCole Hardman guy, so I'll give you that.
Okay. So we can focus a little bit more on the offensive upgrade, and so what does it mean to have a more competent offensive line with Pat Mahomes? Is Pat Mahomes a guy that you have kind of in the back of your head you feel like has always thrived in structure, and now you're going to give him more opportunity to operate in structure, and he's going to just carve you apart?
Sometimes, but I think that's a 2-part equation that requires good separation from your receivers. And if you are bright and you're not getting much outside of what Tyreek can do with his speed, doesn't matter. You can stand back there forever if you guys don't separate.
So if you had to line it from a probability standpoint, the fact that they have doubled down on the offensive line, likely to keep Mahomes healthy. That's true, right? More likely to see him healthy this year. But isn't he still just going to be the guy that if guys aren't getting separation, aren't getting open, the first, second read isn't working out, he's still going to scramble around like a maniac in the backfield, elude pressure, extend the play, rip the bootleg?
I get what you're saying. It is a positive for any team, but maybe less of a positive for somebody like that who can play behind questionable offensive linemen, where if you're going to put resources, draft capital, money, trade capital into this team, it would have been better spent at wide receiver and defense. Hard agree. Yeah,
Thank you.
I wish you would have seen a little more work into this defense, a little more work into getting another receiver. And we don't know about some of these receivers who maybe didn't get a ton of time. You had that Pringle kid wasn't horrid, and there's a rookie out of Clemson. I'm gonna have to scroll up and find him. Again, it was like a fucking third day pick, but that stuff works out sometimes. So
Cornell Powell.
some depth
Haven't heard
there.
of his name.
I
in
haven't
preseason.
watched. I haven't watched a ton of the Chiefs stuff outside of the Cardinals game, and Nicole Hardman's getting some play, so maybe it does work out. But yes, agreed. I wish we'd have gotten maybe some wide receiver depth. And whose name has not come up even once is Mr. Kelsey. Like, that balances things out a little too.
Of course, yeah, he's the cheat.
Like,
He's your cheat. Yeah, he's your cheat
by
code.
far.
Yeah, he's your cheat code. He's getting you every first down that you need to get. He specifically with the type of offensive scheme that they run, he unlocks a lot. And just ask the Buffalo Bills. That Buffalo Bills game, as soon as Mahomes figured out that what he had when he wanted it with Kelsey, that game was over. Bills had absolutely no hope of defending that play, and they ate him alive. Now, if you're saying we're nitpicking here because they only have a top 5 wide receiver in Hill and a top 1 tight end and top 1 tight end in Kelsey, yes, you're right. We are nitpicking here. I just think that your return on investment that you're going to get from investing all of this money in the offensive line probably would have been better distributed across the entirety of the offense. You're still counting on Clyde Edwards-Helaire to put away games for you at the running back position. I have a huge suspicion that that's not going to be a reliable option. Your backup running back, Darrell Williams, stinks. This is not a team that really can manifest much outside of everything Pat Mahomes is going to give you. And if we're right about the defense, and they are bottom half of the NFL, you're going to be in a lot of close shootouts. You're going to need the ball in your hands last. I don't think you're putting so many points on so many teams anymore that you are going to have massive margins that are unobtainable for a lot of the teams that are in the NFL anymore. Like people are catching up to you in general in terms of their potential to put up points. And the blueprint I think to compete with the Chiefs is there. Score 30 points. Let's go do it. And then
be the Raiders.
Be the Raiders. Yes, exactly. Be the Raiders. Go score 30 points and
it's never the answer in life.
Beat the Raiders. Yeah, seriously. But no, just if you can score 30 points, you have a chance. You need the end game scenario to break in your favor. You're not going to get to Mahomes with the standard pass rush anyway. You're going to need outstanding coverage. You're going to need to be able to anticipate what they're doing, when they're doing it. Good luck finding speed to match Tyreek Hill. Good luck finding competent, linebacker safety play to cover Kelsey. But you're going to be in a game if you can score 30 points against these guys. And I think a lot of teams on their schedule are going to be able to score 30 points on these guys. So it'll be a challenging season for them, I think, to reach the heights that we saw last year where they were 14-1 and we expected to crown their asses for the second straight year.
Crown their
now,
asses.
I guess moving all this said, there's 0.0 chance that we get to the playoffs, and I haven't bought a future on the Chiefs at some point. 0.0. Maybe it's Pat Mahomes MVP. Maybe it's the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl. Maybe it's the Chiefs to win the AFC. I don't know yet, but I'm not doing it now. And a ton of that has to do with schedule. We can jump right down to schedule and look at this puppy because it's one of the weirder ones in the NFL with the lopsided nature.
Very. And if the things that we said nicely about the Chargers, if any of that is true, and again, it's still in Arrowhead, but you're starting out. And again, you're not the Texans, but those first 3 games, like that's rough. You get two very, very good teams right off the bat, And then the Chargers in a possibly a very, very good team. Philly, I have no fucking clue what's going to happen there. That's probably a win. Go to Philly, take care of that game.
Take the points. Yeah, take the
Buffalo
points
is your
with the
fifth. Yeah,
Eagles.
Buffalo. Yeah, I think that's not a bad look. Buffalo is the fifth game. Like, these are three teams that are teams that could reach the Super Bowl from the AFC, plus the Chargers that could be a very potent offense. I'm ready for a 2-3 Chiefs team that we are getting on. We're getting on that bandwagon there. Tennessee, that's a fun matchup for like a 58-point over. And then the rest of it there, yeah, you're right. You have Green Bay, but at home.
Raiders.
You have Dallas, but at home. If you're worried about a good offense beating you, you get after that game where you face Tennessee on the road, you have 5 out of the next 6 are at home, with the only away game being an indoor game down in Las Vegas. The end of the season isn't super helpful for at least it's 2 of the lower end teams in Cincinnati and Lord knows where Denver. We talked about Denver. We said, hey, maybe Denver plays the Chiefs and they've already clinched the 1 seed. Yeah, maybe Denver is out of the playoffs at that point too. It can go the other way where the Chiefs need the 1 seed and they're playing a team that, man, hey, we're eliminated.
7-9. Yeah, or 7-9. We're about to get to 8-9. No.
Yeah, I'm guessing. Fangio isn't the kind of guy who lays down in any situation like that. He loves play spoiler, but yeah, the only rough spot looking situationally is the Mega Mini bye. That is a tough one against Green Bay. At least it's at home, and at least Green Bay is off a back-to-back roadie. But you get Green Bay coming off a Thursday while you come off a Monday, the worst in rest spots that there really is. And, you do get the rookie head coach on a Thursday night late. That's not great. When you're a rookie head coach and you're prepping for a short week, the worst case scenario is to be doing it versus a really, really good preparation coach. So there's some bright spots in here for sure. Obviously, the Green Bay game's tough in the beginning of the season. While there's nothing situational on the schedule, it's just kind of a tough start.
Okay, so let's do a quick exercise rundown here. You tell me yes or no whether these offenses specifically can score 30 points on the Chiefs. Okay. Cleveland, okay. Yes or no?
Yes.
Baltimore.
Yes. I mean, if we get to Baltimore, we've seen.
Chargers.
Yes.
Really?
I'm team no sophomore slump. Receivers work out, and you get it done. I think out of those 3, lowest confidence for sure, but they can. Yes.
Washington.
That was a quick yes. Nope.
Tennessee.
Defensive touchdowns, maybe. Tennessee, maybe.
Okay.
That's a tweener there. It's at Tennessee.
Giants.
It's the second straight road game. You're coming off the game from Washington, then heading to Tennessee. That's a tweener. Giants, no.
Green Bay.
Yes.
Raiders.
I want to say no, but
they did
it last year, maybe twice.
Let's leave
definitely
it
got 31 in one of the games.
Yeah. How about Dallas?
I think it's a no.
Denver?
Yes.
No. Raiders? No. Chargers?
No.
Yes. Pittsburgh?
Close.
Late in the
give
season,
them a
I think
no
that's
right
a no.
now.
Cincinnati? Okay. So
No.
in total, there are 9
6
games during the course of the season where your opponent can realistically go toe-to-toe with you points scored. Of those, 8 of them happen in the first half of the season. Only 1 of them is in the second half of the season. So this is a hugely lopsided schedule where all of the challenges, all of the strife, all of the potential heartache that may befall this team, I'm expecting to be over by the time you get to your bye. Maybe over by the time you play.
Yeah, maybe the entry point is either the Tennessee or the Green Bay game.
Yeah.
But for sure, there's some entry
point there. I completely agree with you. And you know what else? Mahomes is going to rack up stats because these are all going to be shootouts through the first half of the season. So he's going to get his numbers up. And then realistically, I think the Chiefs can win out from week 10 on. I don't think they lose a game.
And yes, Femi brings up a good point. Every episode, we made these things a long time ago, and the Green Bay number is not right.
Yeah,
because
like,
that was the halfway number halfway between. If you get lost between Rodgers and
Actually,
Love.
I saw the other day that Westgate updated all of them. They put out that matrix. Did you see that?
Yep. Yeah.
I'll go ahead and update that before we release this to the people.
And real quick, anyone who's hanging with us, first off, if you're in the YouTube chat, you give me a goddamn thumbs up right now. Secondly, I did have a couple people reach out and ask, and I'm guessing Drew might have too, about these. If you're looking at the schedule chart, he's like, hey, are you going to put those out anywhere? And yeah, you've been putting them out in tweets, but I think we're going to try to mash them all into one PDF that you can download.
Yep.
So look for that after next Wednesday's podcast. Once we finish up with the last two teams will be Rams, and I think Rams and Niners will be the last two teams for us, or Seattle. I'm not sure how they fall. But after the last one, next Wednesday, Drew is going to mash them all into a PDF, give you a download link, and you can have all these, put them in your notes.
Okay. So let's wrap this up with a couple of final thoughts. Specifically, if you are like down on the Chiefs, if you hate the Chiefs, if you want to see the Chiefs finally struggle, I think you're going to get your wish early this season. But do not fall into the trap of assuming that means that they won't ultimately be very in the playoff picture in the AFC. Is that a fair thing to say?
Yeah, and we say, hey, we're attacking them after the Tennessee game or after the Green Bay game. And well, how is that attack? And we'll look at the odds here in a second. But I think the dream scenario is Denver is winning close games on the back of a game manager and some good receivers and a great defense. Or the Chargers have won that game in week 3 and the Chargers are doing well. Like the combination of them having a slow start through those first 9 weeks, and either the Chargers or Broncos, I'm just not going to include the Raiders, having a hot start. If you could get a reasonable price to win the AFC West, that would be the best. That doesn't require them to beat the Cleveland Browns, the Buffalo Bills, the Baltimore Ravens. You don't have to beat any of those teams to win the AFC West. Just have to. You just have to do well through that soft second half of the schedule. I'm not saying I won't be adding some, to win the AFC, maybe Super Bowl, some other things. But if that number gets to be reasonable on winning the AFC West, that'll be something I added. And like I said earlier, I do have some under 12.5, so that's an easy hedge as well too. Hopefully, ends up 12-5. They win the division. We get it all.
We've already covered the Bills.
Caboodles.
We've already covered the Bills. We've already covered the Browns. Those are my 2 other potential contenders for the 1 seed in the AFC this year. And I would also like one of those 2 teams to beat the Browns and be the last kind of undefeated or 1-loss team in the AFC relatively late in the season, so that there's some general consensus of, that's your 1 seed. Right? That would be helpful as well. If people look at this and they're like, oh man, the Chiefs, they might not even win the West. They're definitely not getting the 1 seed in the AFC. You need a scenario like you had with the Bucs last year in terms of
sentiment
they're like,
is
God dang,
down.
These guys just can't catch a break. If people, the minute that they do an entire 15-minute segment on First Take about the Super Bowl hangover, that's when you buy all the Chiefs futures.
Yeah, just base it off that, I think.
So, okay. Why buy the Chiefs futures? Here's the key question. Why?
The second half of the schedule.
I have 2 really important questions for you. But no, but we're saying for the purposes of winning the Super Bowl, like they're going to actually have to do it. This is still going to be a small enough number that they're going to actually have to do it. And the question is, well, why? And it should be obvious, but the fact that Mahomes now has 2 extremely obvious playoff runs in him to this point. This will be his 4th playoff potentially his fourth playoff run. A lot more experience than the other guys in the AFC who are trying to get it done. Experience absolutely matters in the playoffs. You will never convince me otherwise. And there's really not a lot of other teams in the AFC who can probably beat Tampa Bay head-to-head in the Super Bowl, assuming Tampa Bay gets there. So, yeah, Mahomes, the matchup, his swinging your win probability in your favor as in those playoff matchups is going to be huge. Even if they're the third seed, let's assume they get the third seed. They ultimately win the West at 12-5 or whatever, right?
Yeah.
They're still favored on the road against the Bills, aren't they? In the 2-3 matchup?
Not by much.
But favored.
Couple points. 1.5, 2.
Okay. Under a field goal, but they're favored on the money line. Okay. Similarly, in the AFC title game against the Browns, they got to go to Cleveland. Are they favored? Yes.
Yeah, it's still the Browns. Kind of a similar line, I'd say,
Yes.
2.5.
Yeah. So you're not going to get the chance to ride them as a dog in the playoffs, is my point here.
That's fair. And that's where I think I could go AFC, and, Super Bowl's just a derivative. They're just derivatives of each other. You can add one, add both. That's fine. So, yeah, if we get to that point, I'll probably just take a sum of money and split it up between the division, the AFC, and the Super Bowl, or if the division price is not reasonable because the other teams have stunk as well, probably just the AFC and the Super Bowl, maybe to make the playoffs price if that's there. You
didn't mention Pat Mahomes MVP. What gives? Too many other moving parts?
Yeah, and that's pretty much sewed up. That's we have the Fitzmagic price.
Fitzmagic 100-1 is already in the books for you. You've already written that one in pen.
God no.
You graded that one already? Okay.
No, yeah, I graded it myself.
No, I mean, is there any situation in the NFL that sets itself up even close to what Mahomes is going to be asked to do this year offensively?
Yeah, I guess there's a point for MVP. You need to evaluate it then. I don't like to look at that one so far out because it's like, what if somebody else is just doing something?
It's just nuclear on fire. Sure.
Yeah, if they're doing nuclear and like somebody's gonna get to there's an extra game. If somebody has just a run, some days somebody might throw 60 touchdowns. It's awful hard to argue with that. Or somebody gets to 6,000 yards.
Why can't Pat?
Why can't Pat?
I mean, isn't he the most likely by a margin to do it?
Yeah,
because
Rodgers,
this team isn't putting away
Jameis.
Games in the ground. I don't care how good their offensive line is upgraded. They're not putting away games in the ground.
That's fair. Yeah, I'm with you there. I guess that one I'm gonna have to feel that one out a little. But
Andy Reid's gonna go for it in the red zone a shitload. You know it. He's going for it on fourth down.
The narrative's
all season long. They're gonna score so many fucking points. This team is going to score so many points, and he is going to rack up just absolutely mind-boggling numbers. They may be the third seed at 12-5, and 12 wins may be enough that people ding him, and they may want to pick whoever has, is 15-2 or whatever. But it's going to be undeniable, at least from a statistical standpoint. The counting stats are just going to be bananas for Mahomes.
And that's the thing too. Like, if you get to that point, it's like, oh man, like they're coming into an easy spot. The offense doesn't look bad. The defense stinks. Like, that's another reason to take MVP, because if that defense probably doesn't turn it around, and Pat's going to be asked to throw 3 touchdowns a game as like his floor. They're going to have to score a lot of points. I like it even more then. So, yeah, nothing for me preseason. If you're looking at these odds, 5-1 plus 240 for Super Bowl and AFC. The West price is pretty funny.
Awful. That's awful.
Yeah, to make the playoffs is a massive number. The win total, I said I played a little on the under just because basically how the schedule hashes out and how the defense is likely to play. So nothing yet, but we will be getting there. I think we're going to get there. This is one where set your alarms. Set an alarm for that Titans game. We'll update it then.
Yeah.
And we're usually pretty open about that. Hey, we're adding a future. We'll talk about it on the pod.
Now that we have a production team, we'll even clip it and get it out on social.
Yeah, we'll say, hey, guess what we bet today?
Yeah, okay.
Patrick, Mayfield has like 35 touchdowns already. You're betting, Pat?
Goddamn right.
You just wait, and then we'll get us a fun second place. And we'll change his name to Patrick Oostusen. So, yeah, I think that closes the. I'm going to say let's close the book.
Let's close the book on it. Let's close
On
the
the
book on the
Chiefs.
AFC West. Let's close the book on the AFC.
The book on the AFC West, yeah.
Entirely. That was the last team of the AFC.
That's true.
Bang. Finished with.
Yeah,
finished with a bang.
We'll let the users choose the next division.
What do you think the users?
Viewers,
These guys are users. Definitely.
Drug addict, I guess.
There's definitely plenty of usury around here.
Yeah, they're shooting NFL right into their arm. I'm excited. We're very, very close. There's going to be actual football on this weekend. We have the college football week 0. We have some South Dakota Little League baseball. God, that team was just a cash cow. One of my favorite teams. It feels like such an extension of the Olympics. Like looking into these children's stats, but hey,
who knew we would figure out the rules of how many days rest you need given pitch count in Little League, and that it was going to matter. Honestly, I mean, it does, right? Like South Dakota's probably not going to win because they blew it today. They wanted to get him the complete game. They wanted to get him on ESPN, and now they're not going to win the World Series because of it.
Their second pitcher's pretty good, but he's not Gavin.
They're going to have to use their third in the championship.
He's going to get drafted next year.
They're going to have to use their third in the championship game. They have 2 more games.
No, there's a 60% chance of rain in 3 days. We are praying for a monsoon up there. We need it all. We need multiple days. I'm hoping that the Little League World Series gets rained out so we can get him back in. So, all right, yeah, the pride of Sioux Falls. Let's go. And
he may not be there.
Thank you, guys.
They're going to have to probably beat California without him in the championship game for their side of the bracket.
Yeah, it's weird how there's like different championship games, but I digress.
That's my hot take. I mean, that's my deep.
Thanks for being in the chat, you guys. Yeah. The Femmies and the Patricks of the world are always here. The Birdies. I'm trying to think who else was in there. Honestly, it's just a lot of those guys. Benjamin joined us.
Our guy Patrick, regular caller.
Patrick is constantly.
He's a regular caller into the Last Word with Cheetah show, by the way.
Clint Richardson.
Patrick, number 2.
He's been around.
Number 2 on the board, behind Tom, who can't
Nick,
lose.
Brian. Yeah, a lot of people. TMCLBNK. I don't know how to say that name. But a lot of thank you for joining us today. Thanks if you're listening. If you're in the YouTube chat, do thumbs up on the way out. And we'll see you guys next week, huh?